Okay, we're in the dining room, and as I told you before, these old walls were all plaster and they were cracking. What we did is we took a hammer and pounded all the plaster out and got rid of it. And the guys have started to replace the wall with sheetrock, 3/8-inch sheetrock. So what they've done is they've measured between these two pieces and cut it to fit and then screwed it in with the sheetrock screws. You can see down here what Roger's going to do now. He's measured this opening, and he's currently cutting a piece of sheetrock to fit in here perfectly. While Edward's mixing the Doorbond, what we're going to do is start to patch up these water stains. They've all been scraped down. And so we'll start to fill in the cracks here and all the holes for the screws and let it set and dry for the next couple hours. What we're going to do now is start to patch some of the holes in the living room and dining room. Edward is pouring in what we call Doorbond. We mix it with water. It's a lot stronger than compound. It's used to patch some of the bigger holes. And it dries a lot quicker than normal compound. So what you do is pour it in and mix it up to get it pasty. And then we're going to spread it on the walls. Okay, at this point, Edward's just going to scrape all the loose paint off from around the water stains underneath the window. And that's what he's doing now. He's already mixed his Doorbond and has it on the tray and ready to go. So at this point now, he's just going to scoop some off. And he's going to apply it to the holes. What he'll do is try to make it as smooth with no creases as possible. He's going to try to get the least amount on that he can and still make it smooth. That'll require a lot less sanding. So at this point, what we do, the least amount of compound that he can put on our Doorbond, the less sanding is going to be required. We're going to try to get it as smooth as possible and take all the excess off the wall. Now it'll take it about an hour and a half to dry, and then we'll be ready to do the sanding. It'll be nice and flat and ready for primer. Okay, now Edward's going to fill in the major cracks on the two new pieces of sheetrock that he put up. The first thing you got to do is put a white or a blue compound tape over the hole and over the seam. That's so that when you put the Doorbond on top, you don't have to fill in the entire crack between the two pieces of sheetrock. We use the white compound tape instead of the blue. The white is a little bit thinner. It's easier to sand and it doesn't not show the tape through the compound. It doesn't need as many coats of Doorbond or compound, so we like to deal with the white. It cuts down the labor on the project. And we're just going to take the Doorbond and go right across the tape to cover up the seam. And again, it'll take a couple hours for it to dry. With a seam of that size, he may have to do 2 or 3 coats of Doorbond. What he'll do is let it dry, sand it down, smooth on another coat, and make it wider until he's got an absolutely smooth wall to deal with before we prime and paint. Okay, the hole that Roger measured underneath the dining room window where the water stains were was 18 by 32 inches. And that's exactly what he's measured out on this 4 by 4 foot piece of sheetrock. As you can see, he's cutting it out with his utility knife. It should take him no more than about 2 minutes just to cut out the piece and to measure to fill in the hole. As you can see, it's a very close fit. There's not a lot of gaps on either side of the plaster where it fits. Fits in right underneath the wood trim. And at this point, what he'll do is take a drill or screw gun and put in about 6 to 8 sheetrock screws to hold that in place. Okay, Roger's going to start to sand now in this wall and prepare it for painting. What he's doing, he's going to use the hand sander here. It's much smoother on the walls. The power sander they use for the ceilings, just because it's hard to hold their arms up over their head for a long period of time. The hand sanding, as Roger is illustrating, is much, much better. They don't take as much compound off the walls. It requires fewer coats to get a smooth, flat wall. You can see he was testing as he went along to make sure it's nice and smooth. Anybody who's doing any kind of sheetrock should always wear a mask. There's a lot of dust created by sanding, If there are any rough spots after he gets done, he'll apply another coat of Doorbond or compound to flatten it out and then let it dry and do one fine coat of sanding after that. This wall will need a good heavy coat of primer. It is a brand new piece of sheetrock. It will take up a lot more primer than a wall that's already been painted, like the peach walls that are in this room. Brand new sheetrock is really soaks in the primer and the paint.
This is a typical house that Robyn gives us to paint or asks us to paint for. The first step in this house, as you can see, all the woodwork is natural. It's natural woodwork. Robyn's chosen to leave it that way. So we're prepping and masking all the woodwork so that it'll be protected from the overspray when we paint ceilings and do our walls. So the first step would be to mask these windows in order to protect them so you don't get any overspray on the glass or on all our wood trim. Another thing to consider is that, as you can see, the walls are not in great shape here at the bottom. That's something that you want to work out with your contractor. Either the painting contractor can take care of that repair work, or the general contractor will have that done previous to us entering the home, and it would be ready for us to just apply paint. In this case, we'll probably be doing a lot of the patchwork ourselves and taking care of that for Robyn, and obviously that would be negotiated as part of the pricing, whether we were doing prep or if the general contractor had everything ready for us ahead of time. So again, you can see we're masking the windows and getting that ready to go, and that'll be the first step in the process on the inside of the house. Okay, here we are. So we got the windows masked up. We're ready to start the ceilings. Again, you have the patch piece that has to be reworked. We're going to have to use a little bit of compound on that to get the walls ready for finished paint, or primer and then finished paint. Right now that we have the windows protected and we're not worried about overspray issues, Paul here is going to start to spray the ceiling out. I'm sitting in a room that's probably 12 by 12. You'll see real quick that spraying ceilings, he'll probably have this whole room done in 5 or 10 minutes. It'll go that quick once the preparation's done. So as you can see, the spray part of it is that easy. It offers us two benefits. Again, one of them is coverage, the other is speed, so that we can get it done efficiently. This apartment that we're standing in is about 1,200 square feet. You can expect to pay for the painting alone about $1.50 a square foot, which puts you somewhere around the $1,800 mark, give or take, depending on how much prep there is. So anywhere between $1 and $1.50 a square foot for the painting. If we're doing some of the prep, it'll be to the high end. If the prep is done for us, it'll be more on the low end. Okay, now that the ceilings are sprayed out, we're going to move on to the walls. Basically, it's a cut and roll process from here. You notice that we didn't use any drop cloths or anything. Robyn's told us that these carpets were going to come out, so we don't have to worry about protecting them. In some cases, if the floors or the tile or a nice clean carpet was going to stay, we would obviously have to protect that. What these guys are doing now is they're cutting in all their edges so that they can roll the walls out and get that done. So like I said, you had a few minutes to spray the ceiling out. The bulk of the time was in the masking and the preparation of the walls. As you can see, when they start cutting and rolling, it's a pretty simple process there too. So this room here, you're probably looking at maybe an hour for these two guys to get this thing rolled out, and then they're going to move on to the other rooms. 1,200-foot apartment with 3 men should probably take about a day to a day and a half, depending on the prep work. And in this case, we're not doing any trim. If we were painting the trim, that would probably take a little bit longer to take care of. But that's the painting process for you.
This is one of our older homes that we're doing somewhat of a kitchen remodel on. We didn't change any of the plumbing. We didn't move its locations, and you can see it comes in through the side here and through the back of the cabinet. We had to cut out a little bit of the cabinet to slide it down. Now we marked right here for our drain. Now we'll take our cabinet back out, we'll flip it over, and we'll cut out the drain this way here. When the plumber comes back to install the drain, he knows what he's doing. Okay, beautiful. Okay, here we pulled off the plate cover to check on either side to see if we had a stud running. But being an older house, they put what's called an old work box in the wall, and they don't need to nail it onto any studs. So what we'll do, we know our countertop comes up 4 inches above the base of the cabinet. So we'll do about 2 inches all the way across, like right about here. We're going to see if we can find a stud by knocking on the wall. And then what we'll do, we'll take a small nail, and because it's going to be hidden by all the cabinets, we will just see if we can't locate a stud. What you can do sometimes is look in the wall and you'll see maybe a little indentation, and sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Like here, we're not positive where it's going to be, so we're just going to have to keep trying until we find something. This way here we can anchor our cabinet securely to the wall. A base cabinet like this here, it's a 3-footer. The base cabinet goes for approximately $150. The countertop is normally about $14 a linear foot. So for $3, you'd be looking at a little over $50 for a top, including all your taxes. Your average kitchen this size here, we're going to have a base here and an upper. We're going to have 3 more uppers and a broom closet. You're looking somewhere in the $500 to $600 range for materials. And depending on your installer, normally it's about $200 to install everything, cut the kitchen sink in and set the countertop, then your plumber comes back and takes care of the rest. Here you can hear it. We found the solid stud. You could hear by the nail, just solid, didn't just fall through sheetrock. So what we're going to do, most of your houses conventionally framed are 16 inches on center, especially your interior walls. So what we're going to do, we're going to hook our tape onto the nail, and then we're going to measure over 16 inches to the center, and then we'll take out another nail, and we'll try it one more time, and hopefully, if everything is framed properly, it'll be right. And there we have another one. So these walls are framed 16 inches on center. I prefer to put 3 screws in a 3-foot cabinet. Sometimes you can only get 2. As long as it's secured to the wall fine, it's no problem. We normally use a 3-inch drywall screw, and we use what's called a square head. This way here, it doesn't strip out in your bed. It's a little more expensive, but they work a lot better. We got the cabinet in, we got it centered, we put a 4-foot level on it. Make sure the countertop into your base cabinet is level, and this way here, we know this counter is level, and what we also do, we take and turn the level the opposite direction to make sure it's level there. And here, you're about a 1/16 of an inch off, which is no big deal. Once we pull the back in, the countertop will be dead level. Also, we placed it dead center between the 2 walls, and here, we'll just take the screw, go through the back of the cabinet, in the drill stop, going on your 16 on center lines, and we'll fasten it right to the wall. Now the cabinet's in there nice and secure. We have one more we can do in the middle. You have to shim them, and after you shim them, you cut the shims off flush, and you put cove molding around the base. This way here, everything looks nice. What we'll do, we'll take and set our countertop on top so we can get a rough idea where the upper cabinet's going to be. Here we're going to take our countertop, we're going to set it up on top of the base, and this way here we can see exactly how everything fits. The hardest part of any of your cabinets or countertops is getting your back wall to fit nicely. We got very lucky on this house. Actually, we re-sheetrocked this wall, so now it was nice and square and plumb. You can see everything fits in tight. Your biggest problem with getting cabinets and countertops, normally the counters take 3 to 3.5 weeks because everything's custom made, everything's custom size. Your cabinets aren't too bad. Some of your supply houses will have them in stock. The ones we use here, we can normally get within a week. We normally use the same cabinet over and over. We have a good rapport with our supply house. They know what we want. They know what to expect from us, and we know what to expect from them. Everything's always interchangeable. If we have a problem with a door, they know what we used on a certain job. We change the doors and we don't have a problem. Here we normally would hang our kitchen, our upper cabinet 18 inches off the top of the cabinet, of the countertop. On this situation here, we cannot do that. We have a light switch in the way, so what we'll do, we'll go 1.5 inches above the light switch so we have enough room for the outlet covers and a little room around it, so there's never a problem. And now we'll mark our lines straight up from our bottom. This will give us our spots to screw our top ones in, and we'll be all set. Put it off to the side, and we'll take a level and draw our level lines up so we definitely know that we're getting good secure on our cabinets. We put little lines on the walls. We can always go back and touch up, or normally if you use a decent paint, you can just wash them right off. It's easier to do it this way than to try to measure out your cabinet, because what will end up happening is sometimes your measurements will be off, and now you'll have extra holes in the cabinets where you don't want them. We're going to be installing the cabinets at 1.5 inches above the outlet. What we're going to draw 1.5 inch line from the outlet up. Then we're going to take a 2-foot level in this case because the wall is under 4 feet. Wherever you can use a 4-foot level, please do. It's just a little more security. We're going to draw a level line, very light line all the way across the back. When you set your cabinet up, all you do is you follow the bottom line and you'll be fine. What you're also going to do, you're going to come and make sure that you mark the same distance from the trim here to the trim up here. This way here, when you set your cabinet in, it lines up perfectly parallel with the base cabinet. Okay, now we're going to take our cabinet, we're going to open it up, make sure there's nothing in it, where this one here all it has is a little bit of hardware. You can see where on this one here it's got a nailing flange on top and bottom, so it really doesn't make a difference which is up, which is down. What we'll do now, Marcos will put it up there and hold it there, and we'll screw it in. We'll just make sure everything is on the lines. Go towards you, go towards you. Okay, back towards me just a hair. Okay, now that we know where all our markings are, we'll take and screw through the cabinet right into the wall, right, and grabbing the stud. If you're using screws, you can always tell when you've caught something because you can hear the drill actually you can tell it's working harder. There, we know we caught something very good. What we're going to do, we're going to make sure, we're going to put the 4-foot level underneath the cabinet. We're going to make sure everything's good. There, you can see it's dead level. So now we have no problem. We'll just go and finish securing the cabinet to the wall, and we'll be all set. Okay, here we're going to set our countertop back on. We're going to make sure everything lines up nicely. You'll see that the countertop lines up with the edge of the cabinet, and you got a little bit of space on the edges, which is your reveal, which is nice. You can see the countertop matches our floor. You try to get everything to be in sync with everything. You can see the light cabinets go with the light color on the floor, and you got the greens and the grays in the floor where you have the greens and the grays in the countertop.
At this point, I'd like to introduce you to Greg Lynch. He's the owner of Fournier Contracting. With the help of Charlie, his plumbing assistant, he'll be handling the bathroom, vanity, and toilet section of our videos. Okay, we're in the upstairs bathroom. This is where the leaks are going down through to the kitchen ceiling. The old antique claw tub that was here has been removed. You can see that the plumber has cut the pipes off. of what was here and has capped it and run new copper pipes to replace the old brass. The tub was removed and put into the dumpster. The old vanity was thrown out. So shortly the plumber will be coming in and building a wall here to support the new shower wall, and the tub will go in this area here. It'll be a 5-foot tub with enclosures. Charlie has already set the tub in, and now what he's going to do is make sure it comes out level. He's bolted it to the 2x4s in order to hold it into place, and he's also secured it against the back wall. This unit is going to be 4 pieces, the 2 sides and then the back panel. We picked a 4-piece tub enclosure here because we had to bring it up a staircase. The 1-piece unit is a lot bigger. It would have never cleared the staircase, and we would have had trouble getting it through the door. So that's why we picked the unit that we did. It would run somewhere between $400 to $550 to buy it at Home Depot. It's going to be a really nice one. It has soap dispensers on it and places for people to put their scrub brushes and whatnot in the bathtub. Okay, the first piece that Charlie's going to put in is the back panel. Another good feature for this particular tub enclosure unit is that the seams do match up and fit very tightly. It makes a waterproof seal there along the back panel and the tub portion, so you do not have to caulk this tub. Okay, one of the things that Charlie's looking for now is to make sure that the pieces fit really tightly together and that the seams are tight. If they did not do that and the tub was installed, it would end up with water getting through the seams. It would end up staining the kitchen ceiling down below. So what he's doing is just making sure that everything's level and lined up tight.
Okay, what we have here is underneath the tub. This is the existing trap here. We're going to cut that off and run plastic back to a new trap a little farther back. This whole job for the tub is going to take me about 4.5 to 5 hours to do.
Okay, we're at the point now where the bathtub has been installed, totally installed, shimmed on the bottom to level it off. Okay, those shims will be cut, and then a piece of molding will be put along the base of the tub to cover that. A piece of molding will be put around the flange here to cover that over so you don't see these screws. Plumbing has all been installed. The valving, the drain has been done, tested, and approved. The wall has been sheetrocked and taped, being ready to be painted.
Okay, right now the vanity is all roughed in. The 1.25 drain's existing in the wall. We brought new copper up through the floor. What will happen is when the vanity comes in, we'll cut the trim back so it fits nice and tight. The drain will be drilled through the back of the cabinet, and the water supply will be coming through the bottom. That'll be drilled, and pretty much that's roughed in, ready for finish work.
Okay, we're at the point now we're going to set a new vanity. Previously here there was an old wall-hung sink that's pretty ugly looking, so we're going to upgrade this with a new vanity. To get to the point we're at here, a couple of things we had to do first. We had to cut the base molding down in the corner so the vanity would sit flush against the wall. We had to drill the interior of the vanity to have our plumbing pipes come up through, and we had to anchor the vanity, level it all, and then anchor it to the studs in the walls by screwing it through the back plate that they provide on the vanity. We're using a vanity that was pre-assembled with a pre-assembled sink top. We're just going to have to put a faucet on it to complete the installation. Total cost probably about $100 to $150 for everything, for the vanity top and the faucet. And next step we're going to do is we're going to solder the shut-off valves onto the copper water supplies, set the faucet on the sink top, and then set the vanity. Next step in the setting of the sink and the faucet, we're going to solder the shut-off valves on under the sink. First thing, most important, make sure the water's shut off in the house by shutting it off at the main valve coming in. Once we determine that, we're going to just cut these pipes down a little bit to allow us to put our new valves in. Okay, using a tubing cutter. Okay, once it's through, this will come right off. Okay, now we can solder on the pipe, the valves. The most important part of any soldering is to have clean copper piping. We use the emery paper to clean it. It's an abrasive type of paper, cleaning both pipes. These are the shut-off valves we're going to install. The piping will go inside to this cup. The important thing here is to have that clean also for the soldering process. The most important step in soldering is the use of flux, which is a paste that acts as the capillary attraction to have the solder go into the fitting. Okay, if you don't use flux, the solder will not hold, so we flux both sides. We flux the valve and the piping. Next, the valve will go right over the copper. Okay. And then that's ready to be soldered. Okay, the next stage is the soldering. Using the torch, we put a rag in the vanity so any solder that drops won't burn the bottom of the vanity. Just a matter of applying the heat to the valve and the piping at the same time. Okay. And you touch it with the solder until it starts to run. And you just go right around the piping with the solder, getting it hot enough to run the solder. The flux right now that we put on before is pulling the solder up into the valve. Okay, same thing on the hot water, same technique. Okay, the next step in the process is to install the faucet and the stopper assembly onto the vanity top. All right, first thing we're going to do is we're going to use plumber's putty under the faucet. This is a soft putty that makes a waterproof seal between the faucet and the deck of the vanity top, so any water that's splashed around the faucet won't go down through under into the vanity. And we just take this and kind of roll it around like silly putty that the kids use and put a ring right around each one of these holes. And that's going to seal down once we put the faucet down. Form a seal there. The faucet comes with a plastic plate underneath it to center it up and to put it on through. Okay, that's going to go right in through the two holes. A little push down. Okay, the faucet is ultimately connected through the back side by these nuts that hold it on. By spinning on these nuts and tightening them up, that'll secure the faucet to the sink top. All these items are provided with the faucet. Any faucet that you buy should have all of this hardware in it. Okay. Snug those down a little bit. Then we're going to go back over to the other side and make sure that the faucet is straight and centered in the opening. We don't want to have it on there crooked. Okay, then we can go back over here and take a pair of pliers and tighten those nuts right down. You don't want to go too tight so you break any china or countertops. Just a good snug fit. Doesn't have to be super tight, just enough so the faucet doesn't move on the sink top. Okay. Okay, and we come back over the other side. We'll see how the putty is now all spaced around the faucet. This will just come right off with your fingernail or small screwdriver. Sometimes all this excess will come off. But now that faucet is sealed, so no water can go down through under the faucet, down through the sink top. Okay. Second step is the pop-up assembly. This is going to be the stopper in the sink. It's a assembly that comes apart. The first part is going to be the part that you see in the sink here. That has to have putty put under it also, just like the faucet did, to keep a watertight connection. Just put a ring of putty around it. Doesn't matter how much, be a little bit generous. It'll all come out when it's tightened up. That's just pushed into the top, and that's going to thread into the actual linkage assembly on the other side. Okay, I'm holding that pop-up in with my hand right now, and I'm going to
Just take this piece and thread it in there until it tightens up. Okay, that's snug now. Now the bottom connection here is a matter of this washer and gasket and this bottom nut. It's going to be tightened up onto the sink bottom. Okay, and the key is the rod that makes the pop-up assembly go up and down has to be straight back with the faucet. So it's just a matter of tightening down on this nut. Good snug tight there to tighten that pop-up assembly onto the sink so it doesn't, no water will leak down through. Okay. This is the piece that is going to connect to the drain under the sink, the trap assembly. It's called the tail piece. This just threads right into the bottom of the pop-up assembly. This is the tail piece that connects the pop-up assembly, which we just installed, to the trap of the sink. Okay, that has to be screwed into the pop-up assembly. The threads are there. Recommended to use some Teflon tape or pipe compound to seal these threads. Just put some on there liberally on the pipe threads. Okay. That threads right into this tailpiece assembly. It's a very, very fine thread. Sometimes it's a little difficult to start. You just got to go nice and easy with it until it wants to go. Okay, just keep tightening that in. Okay, and then just give that a good snug, and that'll be fine. And you can just wipe off any excess plumbing pipe compound or any kind of Teflon that you use. Okay, so that's a complete assembly to go to the drain. The last part is going to be to put the actual pop-up assembly into the sink and connect the linkage in the back that controls that. That's in a few parts. That's assembled in a couple of parts. This is the rod that goes through the sink top, through the faucet, commonly seen in the center of the faucet right here. That goes right down through. That's going to come up in the back of the faucet, down below the sink right here. This is the pop-up assembly itself that you commonly see in the sinks, in the drain of the sink. Okay, that's going to go down into the drain assembly in the sink that we put in there before, that we installed before. This is the rod that's going to connect it all, okay, by loosening this nut and taking this nut right off. All right, I'm going to put this right into the drain assembly, and that just connected right through to that pop-up assembly. Okay, we put this nut back on and just tighten this up, snug it up tight. It doesn't have to be super tight, just a little bit of a snug on that. Okay. And the last part is the actual linkage rod. Has the 4 holes in it. This is going to connect this assembly to this rod. Okay. Most of the manufacturers of faucets, they're all done the same way. The first part is this V-shaped clip that holds this rod, this linkage rod, onto this pop-up assembly. Okay, you have to have this clip, or else this keeps coming off of this rod. It will not stay attached. Okay, so you put the one side of the clip on first, then you put the rod in through the hole, and then you just bend over the other part of the clip and just let it go, and that's in there. That will not come off of that rod now. The last assembly is to take the actual pop-up piece from the sink faucet, run it down through the linkage. Okay, you just got to loosen this screw up a little bit to get that to go through. Okay, now you can see how that went right through the rod there. Okay, then with the pop-up all the way down and open, push down, you just tighten this screw back up. This one you can tighten up pretty good. You don't have to make this nice and tight so it doesn't fall apart under the sink. Very difficult to repair this if it comes apart, to reach up under the sink. Okay, by tightening that gives that whole linkage, and that allows the pop-up to work. Okay, so after all of that, you're all set to install the vanity top on the vanity. These are the flexible supplies that are going to connect from the shutoff valves that we installed previously to the faucet to allow the water to come through the pipes and do the faucet connection. Most commonly used now are these braided stainless steel connectors. They allow you a lot of flexibility in case you have to do any offsets or bends. Very good with the braided flex where they don't burst or rot out. So what we'll do is we'll set these onto these faucet shanks. Just have to snug those up a little bit. Do not have to be over tightened, just a few turns to allow it to be snug. One for the hot, one for the cold. And that'll be our connection to our shutoff valves that we installed. These type of connectors are all a standard thread to fit all of these faucet shanks. These are common industry threads that all manufacturers use the same one. So these connections are all ultimately the same for every faucet. Okay, so now we can go ahead and set the vanity top and do the tie-in connections and be all set. The next step to set the vanity top, to have the vanity top sit on the vanity and be secure, the manufacturers all recommend that you use some type of caulking, silicone caulking, to put along the top of the vanity. And then when you set the top down, that'll adhere to the vanity and the sink top. Okay, so we're just going to take a little bit of bead of caulk and run it right around the three sides of the vanity. You don't have to do the front panel. We're just going to set the vanity down right on top of it, the vanity top, making sure that it'll channel right into the openings under it, making sure that it's even on both sides, level, doesn't rock, which is good. And that's it. The caulk will set up and adhere the vanity top to the vanity. Okay, we have our top set. We're ready to do our connections to our water and our drain. We have our flexible supplies that we already hooked onto the faucet. These flexible supplies have a nut that matches the thread of the valve we installed. It's just a matter of bending them and putting them into the opening and tightening on the nut for the hot and the cold. Okay, you just snug it up, and then you're just going to give it a little bit of a turn with the pliers to tighten it down. And the last piece is to put on the trap assembly under the sink. Every fixture needs a trap, a water seal trap to protect it. Okay. This is the connection that goes into the wall, which we already roughed in on the piping. All right, the drain connection here. And this nut goes on and tightens onto the pipe in the wall. Okay. This is the actual trap itself, the J-bend. This goes up onto the sink tailpiece that we installed before and connects to the nut of the trap arm that we just put in the wall. Okay, it's just a matter of lining it all up, putting the gaskets down, and tightening down the nuts. And turn on our valves and run our faucet and check for leaks, and we're all set. Okay, we're going to assemble a toilet and set a toilet in the bathroom that we renovated. Common toilets sold are two-piece. They come as a two-piece assembly. The bowl and the tank are separate. The first step is going to be to assemble the tank to the bowl. Okay? The manufacturers usually have these bolts coming down through the tank. This is the gasket that goes between the tank, sits into the bowl. Very important that this gets put on if it's not already on the toilet. Some manufacturers do, some don't. Average decent toilet, cost-wise, $100 to $125 for a decent toilet that flushes well, plus a good cost of a seat for it. Okay? So the first step is to take the tank, mount it onto the bowl, which is done just by setting the bolts down through the holes in the bowl. And then all the manufacturers will give you bolts to attach it. Okay, just find the bolts underneath and just thread up the nuts that they give you. Okay. Tank has to be tightened on, hand tight. begin with, keeping it level and square. Can't over tighten the tank because then it'll crack the china on the toilet where the connection is made. If it goes too tight, it'll break the bottom of the bowl. Okay, spin this around. Just hand tight, a little past hand tight is all you need. Okay. Next step in setting the toilet, before we got to this point, the plastic flange was set into the floor. The pipe was coming out of the floor. It was cut to the proper length. The flange was glued and then screwed down to the floor to hold it tight to the floor. The valve was installed as a solder joint to the shutoff valve for the toilet was done previously. The next step is going to be get the wax and the bolts that will actually hold the toilet to the floor. The bolts slide into the channel that's built into the flange, the ring on the flange. They just slide right in. And we get those set into the center. This is the wax. This is the most important part, the seal between the base of the toilet and the floor. This is just beeswax, commonly used in the plumbing trade for years. Very critical seal. This is what stops the sewer gases from coming out between the flange, the top of the flange, and the bottom of the toilet. So this is a very, very important connection. Okay? The wax just sits right on top of the flange. Place it right in the center of the flange, and just line the two bolts up in the center of the flange, and you're ready to set the toilet. Another way to do it is you can set the wax onto the bottom of the toilet first, just the opposite. Either way works fine. Some people prefer to set it on the floor. Other people prefer to put it on the bottom of the toilet. Okay. In setting the toilet, the proper procedure is going to be just to set the toilet down onto the wax so the bolts that are in the flange come up through the holes that the manufacturers leave in the side of the toilet. Okay, just got to make sure that the bolts are lined up straight, coming straight up through. It's just a matter of getting used to lining it up, looking at the bolt, right over the wax, and pushing right down on it until it hits the floor. Okay, and that's how the toilet sets. You can feel the wax compress underneath the toilet. That'll tell you if you've made a good seal on the toilet. Okay, the next step is going to be to anchor the toilet to the floor. The caps, the white caps that are going to cover these posts, hook onto these pieces that the manufacturer gives you in the package. That one goes on first. Then we put on a metal washer over that. And then this nut goes onto the post coming through the floor. It's just a matter of threading it down. Getting it down tightly, and then it's just going to be snugged up with a pair of pliers or a channel locks or a adjustable wrench. Again, you don't want to tighten these too hard. If you do, the toilet's going to crack the china. It's just a matter of getting them snug on each side, on both sides. The object is to get it so the toilet does not wiggle or rock on the floor. Then you know it's tight. Next step is going to be to put the water supply up to the toilet. Okay. Last steps to completing the toilet installation. The bolt that holds the toilet to the floor can be cut so that the cap can be put on over it to finish that out. It's just a matter of sawing off the upper part of the bolt that sticks through. A little hacksaw or anything will do that. Anything you can cut with. Just a matter of cutting that off, and this cap will snap right onto it. And that gives that a nice finished look. The water supply from the valve to the toilet is done with the supply tube, the connector. Okay, it just goes into the valve and threads down onto that. Last piece of this is going to be to put the toilet seat on. Pretty basic installation. All the toilet seats are basically the same. The only difference is whether the toilet is elongated, which would be 2 inches longer than this toilet. This is called a plain bowl toilet. It's a smaller, rounder front. So you have to get the matching seat for the type of bowl you have. Seat just sits down on the top. Through the bolts go down through the holes in the china. And the nuts just come up underneath and screw on until they're tight, until the seat is tight. Like so. And the covers go down. And the last part is to turn on the water, fill it up, and test it out.
All right, let's move into floor coverings. You have 4 types of coverings. You have carpeting or rugs, you have vinyl for the kitchens and baths, and you have hardwood floors as well as ceramic tile. The first thing we're going to cover with you is actual carpeting and the 4 components that go into carpeting. The first thing you have is the actual purchase of the carpet. Carpet is measured by density of the yarn. To meet FHA requirements for building, a 24 to 26 ounce carpet is what you need. Obviously, the higher the density, the higher the price. The second thing you need to be aware of is padding. There's 2 types of padding. You have synthetic pad, which is used for all your commercials, carpets, and your Berbers. What you're going to use on residential housing, though, is a foam-based pad, and it comes in 4 weights. It is a 4-pound pad available, which is very, very thin, and I don't recommend it. There's a 6-pound pad, which is pretty good for density, and then the 8-pound pad is used for custom quality homes. In my typical houses, I use a 6-pound pad for the most part. The third part of the installation is actually the labor involved. I'm paying $3 a yard to have my carpet installed. If I was using a heavy, expensive carpet in a higher-end home, it could be as high as $4 a yard. That also includes the removal of the carpet. They take away all the old carpet that is in the house for me. So what I recommend to you is for installation, a 6-pound pad and an FHA carpet that's 24 to 26 ounces. You should be paying around $11.50 a yard. It will vary a little bit where you live, but for the most part, that's where you should be. What we're going to do now is actually go out to my house on Bergen Street with Gary from Carpet Excellence. Gary installs carpet for me every single week. We run somewhere around 700 yards a month to give you an idea of the volume that I'm doing. We're going to actually show you what it takes to install in a 12 by 12 foot room and actually do a closet as well. And the installation time is somewhere around 25 minutes. The hardwood floors that are in this house, they had a lot of stains. And anytime I have hardwood floors, I would usually prefer, instead of restoring them, to actually install carpet. You never know if the stain is going to lift or if the stain is going to remain once the hardwood floor guys come through. So instead of taking any chances on delaying the finishing of the house by a week or so, what we did is decided just to carpet it. So what the guys are going to do from Carpet Excellence is they're going to start by tacking the room. They're going to put all the tack down that goes on the exterior perimeter of the room. That's what the carpet will be fastened to. Okay, the guys are going to go ahead and install the 6-pound rebound pad now in the room. It comes in rolls of 40-foot length or so. It's about 50 cents a yard, a square yard, which is a 3 by 3 foot segment. The room here is about 15 feet long by 12 feet wide. It should take them no longer than 20 minutes for 2 guys to tack the room, to put the padding down, and then install the carpet. And that's including the closet, which is probably the hardest part, is working in the closet. We'll cut out around the radiator. Now all they're going to do is actually staple this straight down to the hardwood floors. Now all he's going to do is go around, trim all the excess off. So he's running his blade right down the tack board. I'm going to trim out around the radiator. On a typical carpet installation, I go with a hunter green carpet, which is not common as far as the neutrals, but it sells well in our area in Waterbury, Connecticut. This is what they do, is they cut the carpet to approximately the length of the room, a little bit bigger than actually what the room size is. And then with a very sharp razor blade, they cut it to fit, and then it's actually kicked in along the seams. As you can see, they tack it in. It's tacked to the very sharp edges of the boards that were nailed down. And they actually will do all the closets as well. The most important part is for the carpet to be very flat. They'll be tacking it in and stretching it just a little bit. So they actually cut it just a little bit smaller than what the room is in order to stretch the carpet to fit. That avoids getting any buckles or lumps in the carpet at a later date. That extra piece will be worked into the closet. The carpeting that we're using here is roughly around $11 a yard installed. There are carpets available for much less installed, around $7 or $8, the commercial carpets. In the residential homes, though, the stuff with a thicker pile is more desirable. With the medium grade padding that we've chosen here, you get a soft, cushy feeling when you walk on the carpet. It's very critical for resale value that the people feel that you didn't use the cheapest quality materials available. Okay, at this point, Junior's going to kick in the edges on the side. You can see that he hits it with his knee in order to stretch the carpet tight up against the wall. That'll avoid the buckles. And then he'll trim off the edges after that. After they're done installing in every room, it's very important that the cleaning people come through, get all the ravelings vacuumed up, make the house as nice and neat in appearance as possible before you begin to show it. All right, now we're going to talk about vinyl and linoleum floors that we install in all my kitchens and baths. They're my first choice over ceramic tile. What I'm going to talk to you about is the actual thickness of vinyl. It's measured in mils. A 1 mil piece of vinyl is very, very cheap. It can be anywhere from $2.99 a yard to about $3.99 a yard. An average acceptable vinyl is 6 to 8 mils, and that runs around $7.99 a yard just to purchase the linoleum. A really high-end quality vinyl floor can be as high as $14 or $15, and that's around 10 to 12 mils. I use the average to install vinyl in my kitchens. The labor that's involved is around $6 a yard for kitchen vinyl, so it's double what it costs for carpeting. The reason for that is there's a lot more preparation to the underlying floor before you can put vinyl down. Any holes in the floor have to be patched. It has to be an actually completely smooth surface to install linoleum and vinyl. If the floor is really tough underneath, what they're going to have to do is what they call a subfloor, A subfloor is where they take a Luan sheet of wood and they nail it down over the pre-existing floor so that a flat surface can be obtained. The Luan costs about $35 per sheet to have it installed, which almost doubles the cost of a kitchen floor. So what we're going to do now is go out and visit Gary at Carpet Excellence again. His guys are installing a floor on my house on Ridgewood Street, and they're actually going to review with you whether we need a subfloor or not, and then you're actually going to get to see them install a white linoleum floor to match my kitchen, and you'll be able to see all the base molding being put on, the installation, and all the cleanup that's involved. What we're going to do today is install a linoleum or a vinyl kitchen floor. The most important thing that Junie's going to do from Carpet Excellence is fill in all the gouges in the floor. It's called skim coat, and what it is a putty that's mixed with water, and what they do is paste it across the floor and it'll fill in all the cracks. What was here is the old press-on blocks that were put down by the prior homeowner. So everywhere there's a seam, he's going to patch it. That'll avoid the need for a subfloor. It's a lot faster and a lot less expensive to do that as well. If the holes were really big and the floor was uneven, we'd have to do a subfloor. But it's not too bad here. All right, now what Junie has done, he's taken a 12 by 8 foot section of the vinyl. He's trimmed it in so it'll be a very close fit to what we need, so that he's not working with a lot of extra material. He cut me off a piece of the vinyl. It's a 6 to 8 mil vinyl. I'm paying around $8 a yard for the material. And as I told you earlier, it'll be installed for about $5 a yard. So the total is about a $13 per square yard for the vinyl. I picked something with a tan diamond in the middle. This will highlight the color of the kitchen cabinets. The white will also bring out the walls. It'll match the antique white paint that we use here in the kitchen. So it's color coordinated for the house. So what he's going to do now is just put some of the glue into the corners, roll out the vinyl, and take out all the air bubbles. Since he's here by himself with just me, what he's going to try to do now is actually get this underneath the stove. Typically there's 2 on an installation and all the appliances are usually moved out, but unfortunately that's not the case today. So what he'll do is work the linoleum underneath this half of the stove and then tilt it forward and finish out the installation and then roll out all the bubbles underneath. Okay, what he's doing now is just trimming the back piece close to fit into the wall so he can get it down to a manageable size. Okay, what Junie's doing now is rolling his weights across the floor, and that'll push out all the air bubbles. The weight is over 80 pounds, so it will easily push out all the air bubbles. Now, once Junie gets done doing all the trimming around, what we'll do is put a base coat molding around the floor. And we also do gold trim in between the rooms to separate the kitchen floor from the dining room. The complete installation took him just about 45 minutes. And again, we don't do any flooring until all the rest of the contractors are out of the house. The painters have all removed all their materials, their brushes, and everything else, so that when the carpet and the flooring guys come in, they don't have to move everything around in order to install. The next step after the carpet guys leave will be for Sarah to come in and do all the cleaning. She'll go over all the floors, make sure all the windows are cleaned, all the bathrooms are cleaned as well, so that the house is in pristine condition for showing.
Here today we're going to be doing ceramic tile in a bathroom floor. Here we have all our tools that we need to do everything with. We have our buckets with water and an empty bucket so we can mix our mortar mix in for the floor. We have a tile cutter, which just quick tile floors, you just use a regular cutter. Otherwise you could use a water cutter, which is a lot more expensive. This here is basic, run-of-the-mill, any lumber yard will carry it. We have our nippers. So if you have to cut little corners or something like that, you can use them. We have our 1/4-inch notch trowel, which you use for putting the mortar bed on the floor. We have our drill with our mixer, and we also have a circular saw with a concrete blade on it for doing crazy cuts that sometimes you need to do. So what we're going to get started by mixing some of our mortar mix in our bucket, and then we'll go in onto the floor. First thing what you'll do is just open your bag up, and we'll dump some into the empty bucket. You try not to mix too much at a time because you want to make sure you can use it all before it gets hard. So we put about a 1/4 of a bucket in there, maybe a little less. And we're just going to dump our water in. You want a consistent mix. That's why you're going to use an electric drill with a mixer. You're going to want to make sure you mix it thoroughly before putting it on the floor. So we're going to mix it now. Just mixing it completely around. Most of the time you're going to have to add water a couple times to make sure it's thin enough. You don't want it too heavy because you want the tile to be able to bind to it on the floor. If the mix is too heavy, the tile will not set in the top, into the grout, into the floor mix, and you'll end up having loose tiles within a year. So the key to a good floor, your key to the good floor is actually having the best mix you possibly can. So it's a little loose, but not super loose, but not real firm. So it's trial and error after a while. You know just what you have to do. Our mix is nice. If you take your trowel and you actually stick it in, you'll see it's almost like a paste more than anything. This way here, when you put it on the floor with your notch trowel, everything will work out nicely. Here we're on our bathroom floor. What we're going to do, we're going to run a square line off the flat wall. This way here, that will give us a starting point on our floor. So we're going to run a square right off of there. We're going to mark our back edge of the floor and run it right across. This way here, we'll have a nice reference point where to start. You could start against the wall, you can start in the middle. I prefer to start on the flat wall here because our tub has grooves and everything in it, and it's just going to take a little extra time to do some work. So what we'll do, we're going to take our mortar mix. We're going to take it out of the bucket with the trowel. We're going to put it on the floor. Put some out. Now we're going to spread it. Always use the 1/4-inch notch side. This way here, you get your very good adhesion to the floor. This floor is in really good shape. Some floors you're going to come across, you're going to need to put a subfloor down. And for tile, you should have at least 1.25 inches of surface between the floor and your joists. This way here, you'll make sure there's no problem with the floor coming up at later dates. So put a little bit more over here. And what we're using on this floor here is an 8x8 floor tile. You could use anything you want. They sell 12x12s, they sell mosaics. They have anything from a 4x4 to a 12x12. We just happen to pick the 8x8 because it's a little easier to work with, a little less time involved putting it down, and you've got to remember, most things, labor is the key. The quicker you can get something done, the better off you are. So we always try to minimize the time of what things take. Okay, there. We have our floor prepped down. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take one of our 8x8 tiles. We're going to put it right on the line. And we're going to push it and turn it a little bit so it sticks down. Then what we're going to do, we're going to take these little spacers. These ones here are 3/16 of an inch, and they got 4 sides. And what we do, we're going to take another tile. We're going to follow this. We're going to push it down, and then we're going to put the spacer, one on that side and one over here. This way here, It'll give you an exact grout line, consistent all the way across. What we're going to do, we're just going to keep going right down the line, putting them in, following your reference point on the floor that we have back here, making sure everything stays straight. And we're going to put another one in and continue from there. What we're going to do, now we're going to get to the wall. So what we're going to do, we're going to finish out our section here first. Again, we're going to be taking a tile. We're going to have to add just a little bit more floor mix to make sure that we're over far enough. Want to make sure your mix is always nice on the floor. This way here, you don't have a problem. Make sure you put your grout, make sure you put it down properly. Now we're also going to put our spacers in between these two tiles. This way here, all our spaces are still evenly spaced out. Put another one down. We're just going to work, continually to work. Put your spacers in. You're going to need another one here. So we're just going to keep putting them down and work right across the base of the floor. Once we get over to the next one, we'll be cutting some tiles. Make sure you set them properly so everything lines up nice and flat. All your lines are good. It takes a little time. It takes a little time to get used to knowing how hard you got to push down on them. You can see the glue coming up through the floor between the tiles. There. Now we got 2 rows already set in. Now we're going to measure out a tile to cut for our side here. Remembering that you keep a 3/16 of a grout line. So what we're going to do, we're going to measure this over. We got 3 1/4 inches. So what we're going to do, we're going to make it 3 inches across here. We know that we got to measure it up to that point, which is going to be another 4 inches. So what we're going to do, we're going to go 3 inches here. We're going to come 4 inches this way. Then we have to drop back in, measure, and it's going to be 4 1/4. So I'm going to have to mark this one at 4 1/4 here. Same thing here. Then we're going to draw it out with a square, just connecting the dots this way here. Everything will work out nicely for you. Here, this is a right angle, so we know we can just use the square there, and then one more right here. Now we're going to have to take this, what we do, we'll mark the piece that we don't want. We'll take it in the other room, use the tile cutter, and we'll cut it out. Now we're going to cut our tile with our tile cutter. You're going to do, this one here is a little more extravagant than most of the cuts you'll be making because it's got 3 different dimensions. So what we're going to do first, we're going to take the tile cutter, we're going to cut straight across here and snap this piece off. What you do is you just line it up with the cutter or the tile cutter, with the wheel, put it in, draw your line twice, pull back on the little handle, and it'll snap it off nice and clean. So now there's not a problem there. We're going to have to take this one into the other room, though, now. We have to make this cut with the circular saw. This way here, the other one we can just snap right off. So we'll take this in the other room now, and we'll take care of that. Okay, here we're going to be cutting our one small cut with the circular saw. It gets very dusty. It's a little easier if you have 2 people if you're using this type of saw. This way here, one can operate the saw, the other one can push the piece through. What we're going to do now, he's going to turn on the saw, and I'm just going to send this through. Okay. Okay, now that we made our cross cut here, we're going to put it in the tile cutter. We're going to mark it. I'm going to put a couple stripes in it, and then we're just going to snap the little piece right off. This way here, we have our piece that's going to fit right in here, nice and easy. It's going to go. Okay, we're going to have to make another little adjustment. Nothing major. Right here, we have to take out just a little bit for a piece of the wall, and it'll be all set. To do a little piece like that, all you need to do is take your nippers and just chew a little piece off. Remember, you got tile going there, you got grout going in, so you don't have a problem. A little piece coming out, you'll be all set. This way here. There. Now we'll try it one more time. We still got to go just a little bit more. Nothing crazy. This way here, everything will fit in nicely. There's not a problem with it. Just take your time. There's certain things you can move right along with. This isn't one of them. You got to take your time when it comes to making sure they fit nicely. There, that tile fits real nice. We'll take our spacers and we'll put them in. This way here, everything's nice. There. That lines up nicely now. So now you have your cuts in. Everything works good. You have your 3/16 of a grout line. Everything's nice. Now what we're going to do is measure in for one more piece. That piece is going to be a little more complicated because we have a round edge. So it will take a little more time to fit it in. We'll take our tile. Now what we're going to do, we're going to measure it. I'm going to make it 4 3/8 wide. What we're going to do, we're going to mark your 4 3/8. We're going to cut that piece right off using your tile cutter. A floor this size here will cost you roughly $200 to do, tile it and grout. Tile's probably one of your most expensive floors. Takes a little longer in labor, that's probably why. So now we have our piece here. We're going to slide our thing out. This way here we can get our marks where we're going to need our, where it has to start turning. So we got about 6 3/4 before it starts to turn. Now this here is a little more trial and error than anything else, how we're going to make it work. This here is going to end up being 3 inches at the top. So we know we're going to, it's going to run on a circle like that. So it'll take a little time. You can see, if you set it over there, you can see it will line up nicely. All you'll do, you just use your nippers and start just nipping away little by little. Don't try to take too much at a time or you'll end up breaking the tile and then you'll have to start all over again. That's right here, we just keep nipping away little by little. Don't try to take too much at once because then you'll ruin the tile and you have to start all over and you'll be throwing tiles away, and it's never good to throw away any materials. So we always try to buy, this bathroom measures about 37 square feet. It's got a few jogs in it. You got the toilet to go around and everything. So we bought an extra 7 square feet of tile. This way here, when you're on the job, you want to make sure you have enough tile. When you put down your tile, you got to wait 24 hours before you can come back and grout it. There, we nipped around the corner. We're going to try it, and we're going to see what happens here. It actually looks like it's going to be pretty good. We're going to take it onto the saw, and we're going to just round this edge just to get rid of all the burrs. Okay, now we got our piece to fit. We're going to set it right in place. We're going to put it down, move it around a little bit, and put our spacers in. There, make sure we put our 4 spacers in. There, everything's nice. Make sure they're tight. There. Now we got 2 rows already in. We're going to start with our 3rd row. We'll put some more mortar out and keep going from there.
Now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off our ceramic tile floor. As you can see, the guys finished placing in all the tiles and glued them all firmly to the floor. Marcos has mixed up the grout, which needs to be the same pasty texture as the cement. What he's going to do now is just fill in all the grout lines. The tool that he has in his hand is a 45-degree sponge trowel. As you can see, he's going to work the grout in both directions, from right to left and then left to right, to fill in all the creases. You need to use a generous portion of the grout. You shouldn't try to cheat or scrimp. You need to make sure that all the grout lines are filled in completely. What he'll do is after he finishes filling in all the grout lines, he'll take off the excess. And then the tiles get cleaned with a wet sponge. It takes about 2 hours for the grout to actually dry inside the lines of the tile. Now he'll dip the sponge into a clean bucket of water and just start removing the excess. After the excess is taken off, he'll let it dry for about 2 hours and he'll come back with a clean cloth and clean the floor. That'll take the final thin layer of residue off that'll be remaining. Marcos, as you can see, has completed all the grout. At this point, they'll let it dry and set for the next 2 hours. They'll come back tomorrow morning with a clean, dry cloth and take all the final white layer of residue off the tile.
Today we're going to refinish hardwood floors. This particular floor is oak. The other type you'll find in our house is pine. The oak's a little easier to refinish on the machines and everything because you have not as much pitch in it. When you're sanding your hardwood floor, always go with the direction of the grain. This way here, you won't ruin the floor itself. Okay, now we're going to get started with the sander. Just go nice and easy, going with the grain of the floor. This particular sander is an orbital sander. It's a lot easier to operate than the drum sander. You won't have a problem with ruining your floors. The drum sander, if you're not very good with them, you have very good chance of ruining the hardwood floor, and then it gets very costly. Always go with the grain, working back and forth, and everything's going to work out nice. This particular floor wasn't in too bad a shape, so it won't take that long to sand it. Some of them are very, very poor shape where you really got to spend a lot of time doing the floors. This one, as I said, wasn't too bad. We're just moving back and forth, getting every inch of your floor, following the boards, going in the same direction. This particular machine is a vibrating orbital sander for the sanding the floors. What we have here, we have a 20 grit paper, a 36 grit paper, a 60, and a 100. We don't actually use that much of the 20 grit. It's only for when the floors are really destroyed. The other 3 we use all the time. So I hear your first piece, your second, and then your final finished floor. We'll get that there. This sander here runs you roughly $55 for a 24-hour period. You can do quite a bit of floors in a 24-hour period, and they don't rent it by the hour. It's just a one flat rate fee. So if you're going to do a whole house, work right through the day and everything, get it all done, then go back and do your urethane work. This way here, you won't have a problem. This here is what's known as a tack cloth. What we did, we already swept the floor completely, make sure all the heavy dirt is up. Now we're going to go over and we're going to wipe the entire floor down with the tack cloth. This way here, it picks up all the dirt that's on the floor. That's one thing you don't want to see after you've completely sanded a floor and you urethaned it. If there's any dirt in the floor, that's what makes the floor look ugly. So you don't want to do that. Make sure you get every inch of your floor going back and forth. It's a little time consuming, but nothing as much as if you don't do it at all. This way here, you want to make sure you get all the dirt out of the corners, everything off the floor. When your job is done, it will really look nice. Otherwise, if you have a lot of dirt in it, it just doesn't look good anymore. Now that our floor is completely sanded and cleaned, we're going to urethane it. We have an oil-based urethane. We've already opened the top. And the trick to urethane is always stir it, never shake it, because what will happen is you'll get bubbles in your floor. And bubbles just don't look right. So what we're going to do, we're going to stir it up. And we're going to pour it into a roller tray. What we're going to do, we're going to use this here, which is a lamb's wool mop. It's the best thing to put down the urethane with. It covers nice, and it keeps everything nice and uniform. Some people use brushes or rollers. We prefer to use the lamb's wool mop. So here we're going to dump some in, and we'll get started. Okay. We'll clean off the edge of the can. Just move it over here a little ways. Okay, what we're going to do, we're just going to take the mop, put it in the tray, and what you do is just work the same direction as the floor. Always covering. Don't try to spread it too far because you'll have a mess. Put it on nice. You always want to put at least 2 coats on. Some people prefer a little more, but 2 does a nice job. What we're using here, we're using a high gloss finish. It just ends up looking the best in the long run. You see we're working with the grain of the wood. And a job this size here is probably about, maybe 170 square feet, 150 square feet. Will probably take you about a half hour to coat it. You can recoat this particular brand in 4 hours. We normally try to let it sit overnight. This way here there's no problem with it. You come back, make sure everything is dry. You don't want to walk on it because you'll end up making a mess. Just keep going back and forth. Over here we're going to stop at the doorway, right at the middle of the door. That's what we specified this way here. If they ever want to do anything, they have a nice spot to work from. You can see the highlights in the wood come out so nice using a gloss finish. And we're just going to keep working with it. Don't ever let the urethane dry completely where you're going over the top of it. Okay, a floor this size will probably take you somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 hours to sand it and give it the first coat. You'll come back the second day, give it another coat, and my preference is always give 3 coats, but most of the time we just don't have that luxury. 2 coats is more than sufficient. The urethane we used here is about $22 a gallon. It's the highest, probably the highest quality urethane I've found. That's the reason it's so expensive. But it doesn't scratch, it doesn't tarnish, and it stays for a long, long time. And that's, the key is a good product. You spend a little bit more for it, but it goes on very nicely. We've never had a problem with it. We've used it in many, many homes. And now we're just going to keep putting more in the tray. You don't want to stop and have a dry line anyplace because you'll end up having, you'll see the seam where you stop. So just keep going. Take your time, but move right along. Make sure you get everything coated nice and evenly. This way here it looks the way you want it. The better the floor looks, the easier the product is to sell itself.
This now concludes our second segment entitled Interior Renovations.